I hired a man to mow my lawn on a quiet Tuesday morning, while my daughter was already gone for work. Less than an hour later, my phone rang and he whispered, "Sir, I don't want to alarm you, but is there anyone else living in this house?" My hand went numb around the coffee mug. "What do you mean?" I asked, even as dread crept up my spine. "There's crying," he said softly. "From your basement. And it doesn't sound like a TV." That was the moment I realized my home was hiding something I was never meant to find. When I went down to check the basement myself, I was shocked to uncover a secret that changed everything. I'm truly grateful you're still here with me. If you have a moment, please leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Seeing those comments reminds me I'm not telling this story alone. And one important note before we continue: parts of this story have been fictionalized to enhance clarity and impact. Any similarities to real people or locations are purely coincidental, but the message behind this story is meaningful and worth reflecting on. Tuesday mornings were supposed to be quiet. After 32 years of flying commercial jets, Minneapolis to Seattle, Seattle to Denver, Denver back home, I'd learned to treasure the stillness between rotations, the calm before I zipped my uniform back into its garment bag and headed to the airport for another 3-day stretch across the country. I stood in the kitchen of the house on Ashford Lane, the 2-story colonial Margaret and I had bought 23 years ago, when Cassandra was 9 and Felicia was 4. Back when the girls' laughter echoed through these rooms and Margaret hummed softly while watering her herbs by the back window. That life belonged to another time. Margaret had been gone for 10 years. Felicia had vanished 8 years ago, disappearing one March night at 19 and leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a hollow ache that never truly healed. Now it was just me and Cassandra, my eldest daughter, 32, brilliant and driven, who had transformed the basement into a jewelry studio and built a business that would have made her mother proud. She'd left for her downtown gallery at 7 that morning, same as every Tuesday, kissing my cheek and reminding me to take my vitamins. The house felt too big for 2 people, but it was still home. I poured a second cup of coffee, dark roast, from the place on Hennepin Avenue and checked the clock above the stove. 7:34. My Seattle flight wasn't until mid-afternoon. Plenty of time to pack, review weather reports, maybe call Steven about our golf game on Friday. Then my phone rang. Gary Thompson's name lit up the screen. Gary had mowed our lawn every Tuesday for 6 years, steady as clockwork, and never called unless something was wrong. "Mr. Hayes." His voice carried that careful, apologetic tone people use when they're afraid of bothering you. "I'm real sorry to call, but there's something out here I think you should hear." I set down the coffee pot. Decades in the cockpit had taught me to recognize concern when I heard it. "What's going on, Gary?" "I'm mowing the front yard, and I keep hearing this sound. Sounds like it's coming from your basement. Like somebody crying." The mower rumbled faintly behind him. "It's been going on a bit now. Real soft. Like they don't want to be heard." I moved to the window. Gary stood beside his mower phone, pressed to his ear, staring toward the basement windows just above ground level. Cassandra had left 45 minutes earlier. The house was empty except for me. "I'll check it out," I said. The basement stairs creaked under my feet, 16 steps I'd walked thousands of times. Today, each one felt heavier. At the bottom, I stopped and listened. Nothing. Just the furnace hum and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Cassandra's jewelry studio occupied the far end of the basement, a space we'd renovated together 5 years earlier. I'd helped paint the walls dove gray, installed track lighting, built shelves for her supplies. We'd worked side by side for weeks, laughing like we hadn't since she was young. I opened the studio door. Everything looked normal. The work table stretched across the center, about 25 by 15 feet tools, arranged with meticulous care. Display cases lined the walls, silver pendants and gold chains, catching the light custom pieces that had earned her loyal collectors. But something felt wrong. I stepped closer to the table and noticed a drinking glass condensation still clinging to its sides. I touched it. cold, recently filled. The wall clock read 7:43. Cassandra had left at 7. I scanned the room more carefully. The small sink in the corner, its faucet handle damp. A faint scent of lavender soap lingered in the air. Then my eyes settled on the back wall. The paint matched the rest of the studio, the same dove gray, but the texture was subtly different. Smoother, newer, as if someone had patched and repainted it. I pressed my hand against it and knocked lightly. The sound came back hollow. "Mr. Hayes." I turned. Gary stood at the foot of the stairs, gloves twisted in his hands. He wasn't the type to imagine things. "Find anything?" he asked. "Just a quiet studio," I replied, though the words felt wrong. "I heard it clear," he said. A woman crying. Soft, like she was trying not to be noticed. His gaze drifted toward the back wall, then returned to me. Could sound carry from somewhere else. A neighbor, maybe. Maybe, I said. Neither of us believed it. A car door slammed outside. Heels clicked above us. Cassandra's footsteps. She appeared at the top of the stairs, surprise flickering across her face. "Dad, Gary." "What's going on?" "Gary heard something while he was mowing," I said. "We were checking it out." Crying, Gary added apologetically. Cassandra laughed lightly. "Oh, that must have been my podcast. I worked late on a custom order last night and had true crime playing. Lots of emotional interviews. I probably forgot to shut it off before coming upstairs. It's on a timer." Gary's shoulders eased. "That'd explain it. I'm so sorry I worried you," Cassandra said, touching his arm briefly. "Dad's always telling me I work too much." "What brought you back?" I asked. "Thought you had an appointment." "I do," she said easily. "But I forgot my presentation portfolio. Can't pitch a big commission without photos. I'll grab it and go." She headed for the stairs, but I stepped forward. "I'll get it." "Where is it?" Something flickered in her eyes. "Red leather. On the shelf by the window." I retrieved it, handed it over, and watched her leave again, apologizing once more to Gary. From the kitchen window, I watched her Audi disappear down Ashford Lane. Gary resumed mowing. I should have packed. Instead, I went back downstairs. The studio looked the same, but I saw it differently now. The soap smell was recent. The water glass was still cold. Cassandra hadn't worked late. I'd heard her come home at 6. I would have heard her return downstairs. The fifth step always creaked. I knocked on the back wall again. Hollow. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra. "Thanks for covering, Dad." "Love you." Covering. I typed back, "Love you too." But as I stood there holding that cold glass, Gary's words echoed in my head. A woman crying, trying not to be heard. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe my daughter. But something in her voice didn't match her smile. And that glass of water was telling a different story entirely. Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling of the bedroom I'd shared with Margaret for 18 years before she passed. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 11:47 p.m., then midnight, then 1:15. Outside, the wind rustled through the oak trees lining Ashford Lane, a sound that usually lulled me to sleep after long flights across time zones. Tonight, it only made the house feel more alive, more watchful. The silence pressed down like a physical weight, too thick, too deliberate, as if the house itself was holding its breath. At 2:15 a.m., I heard it. A soft creak from downstairs. The kind of sound old houses make when someone moves carefully, trying not to be heard. My hand reached for the lamp, then stopped halfway. If someone was down there, if Cassandra was down there, I didn't want to alert her. I should have gone to investigate. Should have crept down those 16 steps and seen for myself what was happening in the basement at 2 in the morning. But I didn't. Instead, I lay there in the dark, listening to my own heartbeat, and wondering when I'd become the kind of father who was afraid to confront his own daughter. Margaret would have known what to do. The thought came unbidden, the way thoughts of her still did after 10 years. She'd been the strong one, The one who could read people the way I read instrument panels instinctively accurately. When Cassandra was 7 and lied about breaking the living room lamp, Margaret had known before the words even left our daughter's mouth. When Felicia was 16 and snuck out to a party, Margaret had been waiting in the kitchen when she climbed back through her bedroom window at 2 in the morning. "Take care of our girls," Chris Margaret had said in those final weeks, her hand trembling in mine, her voice already fading. "They need you. Promise me." I'd promised. God, how I'd promised. But had I kept that promise? Or had I just existed alongside them, too wrapped up in flight schedules, grocery lists, and the mechanics of keeping a household running, to notice what was really happening under my own roof? Margaret would have seen through whatever was going on in that basement. She would have looked Cassandra in the eye and known immediately whether her daughter was telling the truth. I'd never had that gift. I trusted instruments, data, facts that could be verified. But how do you verify the truth when the only witness is your own gut, and your gut is telling you something you desperately don't want to believe? The memories came flooding back. 8 years ago. March 15th. Felicia had been 19, brilliant, creative, alive with possibility. She just landed a freelance contract with a design firm in New York, an opportunity that could have launched her career far beyond Minneapolis. I remembered the night she disappeared. Tuesday evening, just after dinner. She'd been on her phone texting someone, a small smile playing at her lips. Heading out. Dad, she'd called from the hallway, meeting Sophie for coffee. Sophie Morgan, her best friend from community college. It had sounded perfectly normal. "Drive safe," I'd said, barely looking up. "Don't stay out too late. You've got that meeting tomorrow." "I won't. Love you. Love you too." Those were the last words I ever said to her. The next morning, her car was gone. Her bed untouched. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I called Sophie first. She hadn't seen Felicia, hadn't made plans, hadn't received any messages. By noon, I filed a missing person report. By evening, the police confirmed there'd been no bank activity. Her phone's last ping placed her on Oakwood Avenue, but by the time officers arrived, there was nothing there. Cassandra had been devastated, or she'd appeared to be. She helped make flyers posted online, called everyone in Felicia's contacts. For weeks, she seemed tireless. "Maybe she just needed space," Cassandra said one night a month later. "You know how Felicia was? Maybe she took the job early and didn't want the goodbye." I wanted to believe that, so I did. But lying there now, the small things resurfaced, details I'd dismissed. 3 years ago, I woke around 2 a.m. and heard shuffling from the basement. Maybe voices, too faint to be sure. The next morning, I asked Cassandra. "That was me," she said easily. "New equipment. I'm trying to keep it quiet." It made sense. 2 years ago, our grocery bills doubled. Client showings, she explained. Refreshments. It's part of doing business. That made sense, too. Last year, I found her in the kitchen late at night, loading a tray with sandwiches, fruit, and water. "Working late," she said, smiling. "Deadline." I watched her carry it toward the basement stairs, felt something tighten in my chest, and said nothing. Now those moments stacked together like evidence. The crying Gary heard, the fresh paint, the glass of water, the lavender soap, the late-night sounds, the food disappearing downstairs. And beneath it all, the question I'd been too afraid to ask. What if Felicia had never left? What if she'd been here the entire time? 20 feet below my bedroom, separated from me by nothing but a ceiling, and my own refusal to see. I sat up, heart hammering. The room tilted. I gripped the mattress hands, shaking not from fear alone, but from certainty. A terrible, dawning certainty. I grabbed my phone and opened my notes. Tuesday, 7:34 a.m. Crying from basement. Tuesday, 7:45 a.m. Fresh water glass. Tuesday, 7:45 a.m. Newly painted wall. Tuesday, 7:50 a.m. Lavender soap scent 3 years ago. Basement sounds at 2 a.m. 2 years ago. Grocery bills doubled 1 year ago. Food carried downstairs. I stared at the list as tears blurred the screen. How had I explained away every sign? How had I convinced myself that everything was normal? How had I failed Felicia so completely? My finger hovered over Stephen Harper's name. My oldest friend, a lawyer, someone who would know what to do. But it was nearly 3 in the morning, and I was terrified. Terrified of being right. Terrified of what that would mean about my daughter. About myself. I set the phone down. Tomorrow, I told myself. I'd think clearly in daylight. I'd find a rational explanation. Because the alternative that my daughter had been imprisoned in my own basement for 8 years while I slept above her was too horrifying to face. I lay back down and waited for dawn. 2 days later, while Cassandra was at her gallery opening, I did something I'd never done before. I went through her papers. Thursday afternoon. She'd left at noon for an event that would run until 5, maybe 6. That gave me hours to either confirm my suspicions or prove myself a paranoid fool. I stood in the doorway of her home office, what used to be Margaret's sewing room. Glass desk filing cabinet shelves of design books arranged by color. Everything pristine, just like Cassandra herself. I stepped inside, my pulse hammering. The filing cabinet wasn't locked. I pulled open the bottom drawer and found an accordion folder labeled Household. Grocery in Cassandra's neat handwriting. I spread the receipts across her desk. Hundreds of them organized by date going back 2 years. I picked one at random. Target. March 2nd, 2024. $187.43. The itemized list covered 2 pages. Canned soup, 12 cans. Pasta, 6 boxes. Rice, 3 bags. Bottled water, 2 24-packs. Granola bars. Peanut butter. Multivitamins, 2 bottles. Then personal items, shampoo. Conditioner. Toothpaste, 3 tubes. Deodorant. And at the bottom, always ultra-thin pads. Size 2. $24.99. I stared at that last line. Cassandra had gotten an IUD 5 years ago. I remembered because she'd mentioned it when we reviewed her health insurance. So why was she buying menstrual products every month? I pulled another receipt. Cub Foods. March 9, 2024. $203.17. More of the same. Fresh produce, canned goods, bread, eggs. More vitamins. More toiletries. And again, Tampax Pearl Regular. $19.99. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and began photographing every receipt. Emotion later. Evidence first. The pattern was clear. Every week for 2 years, Cassandra had made shopping trips totaling between $170 and $230. The same items every time: shelf-stable food, basic toiletries, vitamins, feminine products. But Cassandra barely ate at home. Most nights she had client dinners. The food in our refrigerator regularly went bad, unless someone else was eating it. I opened my calculator. Average $200 per week. 52 weeks. 2 years. $20,800. I found more in a separate envelope. Amazon orders. Women's clothing, size small. Cassandra wore medium, yoga mat and resistance bands. June 2023. Cassandra had never done yoga. Paperback novels. August 2023. Mysteries and thrillers. Cassandra only read design magazines, sketch pads and drawing pencils. November 2023. Cassandra worked in jewelry, not illustration. Each purchase was small enough not to raise questions. But together they told a story. Someone was living in this house. Someone who needed food clothes books. Someone who wore size small and drew sketches. Someone exactly like Felicia. I sat down hard in Cassandra's desk chair, staring at the scattered receipts. I heard her car at 5:47 p.m. By then, I'd put everything back and started dinner. Chicken marsala, her favorite. The kitchen smelled warm and normal. She came through the door glowing. Dad 3 sales and Mrs. Peterson wants a custom piece. Best opening yet. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I handed her wine. Tell me everything. She talked for 20 minutes about clients' compliments, networking opportunities. She looked so normal, so innocent. We sat down to eat. I waited until she'd relaxed before speaking. I've been meaning to ask, you've been hosting client events at home, right? She looked up, fork paused. What do you mean? The shopping? Our grocery expenses have gone up quite a bit. I figured you must be entertaining here. The briefest pause. Then she smiled. Oh, absolutely. Private viewings for VIP clients. They expect wine, good cheese, fancy crackers. It's expensive, but it pays for itself. Her voice was smooth, confident. But her knuckles had gone white around her fork. Makes sense, I said. Though I noticed a lot of personal items on the receipts, feminine products specifically. Bulk buying dad. No hesitation. It's cheaper. You know how I am about budgets. Right, though I thought you had an IUD. 3 seconds of silence. I do. Her voice was careful now. But I keep supplies on hand for clients. Sometimes women need something in an emergency. Good hospitality. Every answer perfectly reasonable on the surface, but the knuckles were still white. A small vein pulsed at her temple. You're very thoughtful, I said. She relaxed slightly. I try. We finished dinner talking about her commissions, the weather. All perfectly normal. She went upstairs at 9. Exhausted. Big day tomorrow. Good night, Dad. Good night, sweetheart. I waited 30 minutes. Then I went down to the basement. The studio door was closed but unlocked. I slipped inside, moving through the darkness toward the back wall. I put my hand flat against the fresh paint. Cold. Solid. Hollow. I knocked softly. The sound came back, muted, absorbed. I pressed my ear to the wall and held my breath. For 30 seconds, nothing. Then so faint I might have imagined it breathing. Quick and shallow. Someone trying desperately not to be heard. Felicia, I whispered. The breathing stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and suffocating. Felicia. I whispered again. If you can hear me. Footsteps from upstairs. Cassandra's bedroom door opening. I stepped back from the wall, heart hammering. Moved quickly toward the door. Behind me, the breathing had started again. Faster, almost like crying. I slipped out and headed for the stairs. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd figure out who to call, how to get help. But one thought consumed me. My daughter had been 20 feet away. For 8 years, she'd been right here, and I was going to get her out. Stephen's call came Thursday afternoon, just as I was stuffing clothes into my overnight bag for my flight to Seattle. Chris. His voice was tight, strained in a way I'd never heard before. Not in 20 years of friendship. We need to talk. Now. I stopped mid-fold, a shirt hanging from my hands. What's wrong? It's about the trust fund you set up for Felicia. There's something you need to see. My stomach dropped. What kind of something? Not over the phone. How fast can you get here? I glanced at my watch. 2:30. My flight boarded at 6. 20 minutes. I'll be waiting. Stephen's firm occupied the 12th floor of the IDS Tower in downtown Minneapolis, all glass, steel, and quiet authority. I'd been here countless times after Margaret died, when I updated my will when we created Felicia's trust fund after her 16th birthday. Today the elevator felt unbearably slow. Stephen met me at reception himself, which immediately set my nerves on edge. His assistant usually handled that. He looked older than I remembered, more gray at his temples, deeper lines etched into his face. Thanks for coming, he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, but his palm was damp. Come in. Once inside his office, he closed the door and pulled the blinds. Whatever I'm about to show you stays between us until we understand it, he said. Sit. I did. He opened a thick folder and spread documents across the desk, bank statements, transaction logs, spreadsheets dense with numbers. You remember the trust Margaret set up for Felicia, he said. $500,000 from her insurance and savings. Felicia was supposed to gain access at 21. But when she disappeared, I made Cassandra temporary trustee, I finished. She was responsible. I thought my voice faltered. I thought it was safe. Legally, you did everything right, Stephen said carefully. But Cassandra's been withdrawing money. A lot of it. He slid a spreadsheet toward me highlighted in yellow and red. This covers 8 years, starting March 2016, 2 weeks after Felicia vanished. The numbers blurred as I read. March 28, 2016, minus $50,000. April 15, 2016, minus $50,000. May 3, 2016, minus $50,000. $150,000 in 3 months, Stephen said quietly. Labeled Debt Repayment, Derek Hamilton. The name rang faintly. Her boyfriend. They dated for a while. She transferred him $150,000 of Felicia's money, Stephen said. And that's only the beginning. Another document followed. Smaller withdrawals, spaced out, relentless. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. It adds up, he said, tracing the totals. Roughly $350,000 over 8 years. My hands clenched the chair. For what? Stephen pulled out receipts and invoices. According to Cassandra's filings, multiple purposes. $100,000 to a company called J. Morrison Construction, based in Iowa. Listed as home renovation. My breath caught. Renovation. We haven't renovated anything. I checked, Stephen said. No permits, no inspections. Nothing filed at your address in over 10 years. The room swayed slightly. I grabbed the edge of the desk. Another $80,000 labeled operational expenses, food supplies, equipment. $70,000 to start her gallery, which checks out. And about $100,000 spread across savings and investment accounts under her name. She told me the gallery was funded by loans, I said. She lied. The word settled heavily between us. My eyes returned to the spreadsheet. J. Morrison Construction. Iowa, $100,000. Who is J. Morrison? I don't know yet, Stephen said. But $100,000 in cash for a renovation that never happened. He leaned back. Chris, we need to consider something. That Cassandra knows exactly what happened to Felicia. I said the words bitter. That she's been lying to me for 8 years. Stephen didn't argue. I told him everything then. About Gary hearing crying. About the water glass without a ring. About the extra grocery receipts. About the fresh paint on the basement wall that sounded hollow when I knocked. He listened silently, his expression darkening. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. I need to ask you something carefully. Do you think Cassandra could have hurt Felicia? No, I said instantly. Then softer, I don't know. If she had access to this money, he said, hired an out-of-state contractor, bought years of extra supplies. He stopped. My throat burned. Here's what we do, Stephen said, shifting into strategy. I'm hiring a forensic accountant. We trace every transaction. We find Derek Hamilton, and we find Jay Morrison. How long? A week, maybe less. A week, I said, standing. Felicia could be. Chris, Stephen said, gripping my shoulder. Do not confront Cassandra, not yet. If Felicia is alive and you alert Cassandra, I understand. So you go home, he said. You act normal. Can you do that? I pictured Cassandra across the dinner table, smiling. I can. He handed me copies of the statements. Hide these. I sat in my car afterward, engine off, staring at the documents. $500,000. Margaret's legacy for Felicia. Gone. Spent piece by piece. J. Morrison Construction, Iowa. $100,000. What had Cassandra built with that money? And where was my daughter while it was being built? I started the engine. Seattle could wait. Tomorrow I was finding Jay Morrison, and I was going to find what he built in my house. Friday morning, Dorothy Green knocked on my door at 8:15. I'd just gotten back from Seattle, hollow-eyed and exhausted. But the look on her face, pale, frightened, told me sleep would have to wait. Mr. Hayes. Her voice shook. I need to show you something. I should have come forward years ago, but I was afraid. I stepped aside. "Come in." Dorothy had lived next door for 15 years. She'd been Margaret's friend, brought casseroles after Margaret died. Now 72, a widow with insomnia that kept her awake most nights. She perched on the sofa, clutching a canvas bag, eyes darting toward the door. "I'm a light sleeper, Mr. Hayes. Have been since Robert died." She took a shaky breath. "And over the years, I've noticed things." "What kind of things?" "I see lights in your basement, late at night when the rest of the house is dark. And I see Cassandra going down there, carrying dishes, carrying bags." She paused. "It started 8 years ago, right after Felicia disappeared." Dorothy pulled 3 spiral notebooks from her bag, thick, worn at the edges. "I started keeping track in 2017. The pattern never changed. I opened the first one. Handwritten entries, each dated and time-stamped. March 15th, 2017, 2:30 a.m., Cassandra exited basement carrying tray with empty dishes. July 22nd, 2021, 11:45 p.m., heard faint crying from direction of Hayes' house. Lasted 10 minutes. October 3rd, 2023, 3:15 a.m., Cassandra made 3 trips to basement, carrying pillows, blankets, books, entry after entry spanning years, hundreds of them, in the beginning 2 or 3 times a week. Dorothy said quietly. By 2018, 4 or 5 times. Always late. Always when you were asleep or away. The notebook slipped from my hands. You heard crying. She nodded, tears welling. I wasn't sure. It was so faint. But yes, in 2019 I called the police. She looked at her folded hands. Anonymous tip. Said I was concerned about activity here. Oh, what happened? They came, 2 officers. You were on a flight. Cassandra showed them around, explained she ran a business from the basement. They said everything seemed fine and left. And then, Dorothy's hands twisted together. The next day, Cassandra came to see me. She was smiling, but it wasn't friendly. She said, "Mrs. Green, sometimes curiosity can be dangerous. This is such a quiet neighborhood. I'd hate for anything to disturb that peace." Her voice cracked. She didn't threaten me directly, but I understood. So I stopped calling. I just watched and wrote. I couldn't be angry at this 72-year-old widow, terrified even now. "You're here now," I said. "That takes courage." She pulled out a USB drive with shaking hands. "There's more. So last year I installed a security camera pointing at your house. I know it was an invasion of privacy, but I needed to know if what I was seeing was real. I plugged the USB into my laptop. February 14th, 2024, 2:47 a.m. Night vision footage showed Cassandra emerging from the basement, carrying garbage bags, glancing around. March 3rd, 2024, 12:35 a.m. Cassandra stood at the basement door, looking up at my bedroom window, checking if I was asleep. November 8th, 2023, 11:52 p.m. A dark sedan pulled into my driveway. A man got out carrying a large box. Cassandra met him at the basement door. They spoke briefly, then he handed her the box and left. "Who is that?" I asked. "I don't know. But I've seen that car 3 times over the past year. Always late at night. Always delivering something. Derek Hamilton, it had to be." "There are 47 videos," Dorothy said. "Enough to show the pattern. She's been going down there almost every night for 8 years. Very careful to make sure you never knew." I ejected the USB, hands trembling. 8 years of evidence. 8 years of my neighbor watching, too frightened to act. Why come forward now? Because Tuesday I heard your landscaper on the phone. He'd heard crying too. And I realized if there was another witness. Tears streamed down her face. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I took her hand. "Thank you, Dorothy. You've been braver than you know." "What are you going to do?" I'm going to find out what my daughter has been hiding, and I'm going to make sure she never hurts anyone again. After Dorothy left, I sat alone, her notebooks spread across the coffee table. 8 years of evidence, meticulous, undeniable. I played the videos again. Cassandra carrying bags, Cassandra checking my window, that car delivering boxes. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra: morning dad, client lunch until 3. See you tonight. Love you. Love you. Did she, or was I just another person to deceive? I picked up Dorothy's first notebook. Inside the cover: if something happens to me, give this to the police. Dorothy Green. She'd been building a case, preparing for the day someone would believe her. That day was today. I added Dorothy's evidence to my file. Gary's testimony, the grocery receipts, Stephen's trust fund documents, and now notebooks and videos showing 8 years of suspicious activity. The pieces were coming together. Dorothy's voice echoed in my head. What do you think she's hiding down there, Mr. Hayes? I stared at the USB drive, at those notebooks filled with 8 years of late-night observations. Deep down, I already knew the answer. My daughter, my Felicia, was down there. Had been down there all along. 20 feet below my bedroom, hidden behind fresh paint and hollow walls, and 8 years of carefully constructed lies. And tomorrow, I was going to get her out, no matter what it took, no matter who I had to face. Even if that person was my own daughter. The LinkedIn message came at 2:30 on a Friday afternoon. I'd just returned from Dorothy's house, my head still spinning from 8 years of handwritten notes and grainy security footage, when my phone buzzed. Riley Summers, graphic designer at Digital Arts Studio, Minneapolis. Subject: about Felicia Hayes. I need to speak with you urgently. I stared at the name. Riley Summers. Felicia's best friend from the University of Minnesota. The one who'd called me every week for the first 6 months after Felicia disappeared, asking if there was any news. The one who'd stopped calling after a year, her voice breaking on the last message she left. I can't keep doing this to myself, Mr. Hayes. I'm so sorry. I hadn't heard from her in 7 years. Her message was brief. I've been investigating Felicia's disappearance on my own for the past 6 months. I found something. Can we meet today? I'm in Minneapolis. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. Mr. Hayes. Riley. My voice came out hoarse. What did you find? Not over the phone, she said quickly. Can you meet me at Riverside Brew on Hennepin Avenue, 4 o'clock? I glanced at the clock. An hour and a half. I'll be there. Riverside Brew was tucked into a quiet corner off Hennepin. The kind of place where the espresso machine hissed softly and the afternoon crowd thinned out by 3. I arrived early and claimed a table in the back, away from the windows. Riley walked in at exactly 4 o'clock. I recognized her immediately, same dark, curly hair, same quick stride. But she looked older now, sharper. 27, maybe. She carried a leather messenger bag over one shoulder and an iPad in her hand. Mr. Hayes. She slid into the seat across from me, her eyes scanning the room once before settling on mine. Thank you for coming. You said you found something. She nodded, setting the iPad on the table between us. I need you to understand something first. Felicia and I were roommates sophomore through senior year. She was my best friend. When she disappeared, Her voice caught. She took a breath. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago. Cost me $8,000. He didn't find much, but he did find this. She tapped the iPad, and a website loaded: Cassandra Hayes Designs. I knew the site. Cassandra's jewelry line. She'd launched it 3 years after Felicia disappeared, claiming she'd been inspired by grief to channel her creativity into something beautiful. The pieces were elegant necklaces, bracelets, rings, all minimalist silver and gold with intricate engravings. I know Cassandra's work, I said slowly. What about it? Riley's jaw tightened. These aren't Cassandra's designs, Mr. Hayes. They're Felicia's. I blinked. What? She swiped to a second screen, a photo of a silver pendant with a delicate vine pattern curling around the edges. This is from Cassandra's 2022 collection. $1,200. Sold out in 3 days. She swiped again. This is a sketch Felicia did in 2015. I found it in a box of her old coursework I'd been storing. The two images sat side by side. The match was undeniable. The curve of the vine, the spacing of the leaves, the way the stem wrapped around the center, it was identical. That's one design, I said, my pulse quickening. Could be a coincidence. I thought so too. Riley swiped through 15 more comparisons. 15 designs from Cassandra Hayes' designs. 15 sketches from Felicia's college portfolio. Every single one a perfect match. My hands went cold. There's more, Riley said quietly. She zoomed in on the pendant image. Look at the engraving, right here. I leaned closer. At first I saw only the vine pattern. Then Riley traced her finger along the curve of a leaf, and I saw it a tiny, almost invisible F hidden in the negative space. And Felicia used to do that, Riley whispered. Sign her work with a hidden F. She did it in every design. I asked her once why she didn't just sign her name outright. She said, "If people care enough to look, they'll find me." I stared at the letter. My daughter's signature, hidden in plain sight. 15 designs. Riley continued, her voice shaking now. 15 pieces over the last 3 years, all with Felicia's hidden F. She's alive, Mr. Hayes, and she's been trying to tell us. The cafe noise faded. The hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversation, it all blurred into static. Where is she? I asked. I don't know. Riley's eyes were bright with unshed tears. But I think Cassandra does. I told her everything. Gary hearing crying in the basement, the grocery receipts totaling $20,000 over 2 years, Stephen's discovery of the missing trust fund, $500,000 drained in 8 years, Dorothy's notebooks and surveillance footage showing Cassandra carrying bags into the basement at midnight week after week. Riley listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was crying. She's in the basement, Riley said. Isn't she? I think so. How long? I couldn't say it. The number felt impossible. 8 years. Riley covered her mouth with both hands. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she looked up. What are you going to do? I thought of the hidden F. 15 times my daughter had tried to reach the world. 15 times she'd been ignored. Not anymore. I'm going to bring her home, I said. Riley reached across the table and gripped my hand. Then let me help. That night, after Cassandra had gone to bed, I lay awake until I heard the sound of her bedroom door closing and the soft click of the lock. At exactly 11:30 p.m., I sat up and made my way downstairs to the basement. This time I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for my daughter. I'd prepared everything earlier that evening while Cassandra was at the gallery. A tape measure, a flashlight, my phone with Stephen's number on speed dial. I'd called him at 9 o'clock and told him what I was about to do. He'd wanted to come with me, but I'd said no. If I was wrong, if there was nothing down there, I didn't want to drag him into the wreckage of my paranoia. But I wasn't wrong. I knew that now. Before I open this door, before I see what's been hidden from me for 8 years, let me ask you something. Have you ever been this close to the truth, only to be terrified of what you might find? Drop a comment below and tell me, would you open this door? And if this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. A brief disclaimer, this story includes fictionalized elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. If you're not comfortable with that, feel free to exit now. For everyone else, let's find out what's waiting on the other side. I descended the basement stairs slowly, each step deliberate, my hand gripping the railing. At the bottom, I paused and listened. The house was silent, Cassandra's bedroom was directly above the living room 2 floors up. She was a heavy sleeper. I had time. I opened the studio door and flipped the light switch. The fluorescent panels overhead buzzed to life, flooding the room with harsh white light. Everything looked the same as it had on Tuesday morning. Cassandra's work table in the center, sketches pinned to the corkboard. The silver pendant Riley had shown me in one of those photographs, now sitting on the counter, gleaming under the lights. I closed the door behind me and pulled out the tape measure. The exterior wall of the basement ran along the back of the house. From the base of the stairs to the far end, I measured 40 feet. Then I stepped inside the studio and measured again. The interior length from the door to the back wall came out to 25 feet. 15 feet. Missing. I moved to the width. The full basement stretched 30 feet across. The studio was 15 feet wide. On the right side, the wall was poured concrete, the foundation of the house. On the left side, there was drywall. Fresh drywall. Painted white, smooth, seamless. But drywall wasn't a foundation wall. I pressed my palm against it. It was cool to the touch. I knocked lightly with my knuckles. The sound that came back was hollow. Empty. There was a room behind this wall, 15 feet deep, 12 feet wide, 180 square feet, big enough to live in. I swept the flashlight along the drywall, searching for seams, hinges, anything that might indicate a door. At first I saw nothing. The wall was unbroken, painted edge to edge, but then my light caught on something near the corner. A tall bookshelf, 6 feet high, pressed flush against the wall. I approached it slowly. The shelf was filled with design books, jewelry techniques, metalwork, and a few art history texts. It looked heavy, permanent. I tried to push it. It didn't budge. I crouched down and aimed the flashlight at the base. There, just visible beneath the lowest shelf, were 4 small rubber wheels, caster wheels, the kind you'd find on a rolling cart. But they weren't rolling. They were locked in place by metal pins. And beside the left front wheel, half hidden by the shelf's wooden frame, was a small electronic keypad. 4 digits. A tiny LED light glowing red. I stared at it. My pulse hammered in my ears. Cassandra had built a lock, a code. I thought of the receipts. The $100,000 payment to J. Morrison Construction. The basement renovation that had never been permitted, never inspected, never recorded anywhere but in Stephen's files. This was what that money had bought. Not a studio, a prison. I wiped my palms on my jeans and entered the first code that came to mind, 1992. Cassandra's birth year. The LED blinked red. Incorrect. I tried 1997. Felicia's birth year. Red again. 2006. The year Margaret died. Red. I sat back on my heels, staring at the keypad. What number would Cassandra use? What number mattered enough to her to lock her sister away behind it? And then I knew. 2016. The year Felicia disappeared. I entered the digits slowly. The LED turned green. A soft click sounded from inside the bookshelf, and the metal pins released. The shelf rolled forward an inch, as smooth as silk. I grabbed the edge and pulled. It slid aside easily, revealing a narrow gap in the wall behind it. And there, set into the drywall, was a steel door. Gray industrial, with a deadbolt lock mounted on the outside. The lock was open. I stood there, my hand hovering over the doorknob, unable to move. My chest felt tight. My vision blurred at the edges. From the other side of the door, I heard it, a soft, shallow breath. Someone was in there. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the cold metal. The breathing was faint, careful, as if whoever was inside was trying not to make a sound. "Felicia," I whispered. The breathing stopped. 5 seconds of silence. Then a sound so quiet I almost missed it. A sharp intake of breath, a sob caught halfway in a throat. And then a voice. Weak, hoarse, trembling. Dad. My knees buckled. I braced myself against the doorframe, my hand shaking as I gripped the handle. Felicia! My voice cracked. Baby, is that you? A sob broke through the door, small, broken, full of 8 years of pain. Dad. Her voice dissolved into crying. Dad, you came. I knew you would. I reached for the deadbolt, ready to throw it open, but then I heard it footsteps. Upstairs. Slow, deliberate. Moving toward the staircase. Cassandra was awake. I froze, my hand still on the lock. If I opened this door now, if Cassandra came down and found me here, she would lie. She would twist the story. She would call the police and say I'd broken into her studio, that I was delusional, that I was dangerous. And I couldn't risk that. Not when I was this close. I pressed my forehead against the door. Felicia, I whispered urgently. I'm going to get help. I'm calling the police right now. I'm going to get you out of here. I promise. Please. Her voice was barely audible. Please don't leave me alone again. I won't. I said, tears streaming down my face. I'm not leaving. I'm just going upstairs to call. You hear me? I'm getting you out tonight. She didn't answer, just cried. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Christopher Hayes. I'm at 2847 Ashford Lane, Minneapolis. My daughter, she's been held in my basement for 8 years. She's alive. I need officers here immediately. Sir, can you confirm your address? 2847 Ashford Lane. Please, she's locked in a room. I can hear her. She's alive. Officers are on the way, sir. Stay on the line with me. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. My hand was still pressed against the steel door. On the other side, Felicia had gone quiet again. Felicia, I whispered. I'm here, she said softly. Help is coming. Okay. I closed my eyes and leaned my weight against the door, my palm flat against the cold metal, as if I could reach through it and touch her. Dad, she said after a moment. Yeah, baby. You found me. My chest tightened. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears running down my face, my hand pressed to the door like a lifeline. I was still standing in the basement, one hand pressed against the steel door, when I heard the doorbell ring upstairs. My first thought was, the police can't be here this fast. My second thought was, Cassandra is awake. But when I raced up the stairs and looked through the peephole, I saw Derek Hamilton standing on the porch, his face pale and haunted. I yanked the door open. Derek, what are you doing here? He looked past me into the house, his eyes darting left and right. He was thin, thinner than I remembered, and his hands shook as he clutched a worn messenger bag. I heard you went to see a lawyer, he said, his voice low and urgent. I heard you've been asking questions. Mr. Hayes, I need to tell you everything before the police get here. Please. I heard it then, the faint wail of sirens in the distance getting closer. Derek heard it too. I've got maybe 10 minutes, he said. Maybe less. Please, let me explain. I pulled him inside and shut the door. Derek collapsed into the armchair in the living room, his whole body trembling. I stood over him, my fists clenched, every instinct telling me to throw him out. But I didn't. I needed to hear this. 8 years ago. Derek began, his voice shaking. I made the worst mistake of my life. Cassandra asked me to help her with something. She said it was just a prank, a way to teach Felicia a lesson about humility. I was stupid enough to believe her. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice cold. Derek looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "I owed $45,000. Gambling debts. Cassandra knew about it. She said if I helped her, she'd pay it all off." I said nothing, just waited. "The plan was to stage a fake car accident," Derek continued. "To scare Felicia, make her think she'd hit someone. Cassandra said it would only last one night, that we'd tell her the truth the next morning. But we never did." He pulled a USB drive from his bag and set it on the coffee table between us. "It's all on here. The recordings, the messages, the bank transfers. Cassandra admitting the accident was fake. My confession, everything." I stared at the drive. My hands were shaking. "Tell me what happened that night," I said. Derek took a shaky breath. "I rented an old Honda Civic. Bought a mannequin and fake blood from a costume shop. Cassandra had already set everything up. She'd been texting Felicia from a burner phone, pretending to be a friend, asking her to meet up on Oakwood Avenue. It's a back road. No cameras. No traffic. I felt sick. Felicia drove out there around midnight," Derek said. "I put the mannequin in the road. She hit it. She panicked. Cassandra showed up a minute later and told her she'd killed someone. Told her his name was Thomas Whitmore. I showed up after that, pretending to be an off-duty cop. I took her statement, made her think she was going to prison, and then—" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Then Cassandra brought her here. Told her she'd help her hide until things blew over. But things never blew over. Because there was no Thomas Whitmore. There was no investigation. It was all fake." Derek's voice broke. "The next day, Cassandra told me the plan had changed. She said Felicia was too talented to let go, that her designs could make us both rich. She promised it would only be a few months." "It's been 8 years, I said. "I know." Derek buried his face in his hands. "I know." He told me the rest. How Cassandra had paid his debt in small installments, 500 here, 1,000 there, never all at once, always keeping him dependent. How she'd threatened him. "If you say anything, you'll go to prison too." How she'd isolated him, cut him off from his family, convinced him that they were both trapped in this together. She made me believe we were protecting Felicia. Derek said, his voice hollow. That if the truth came out, Felicia would go to prison for killing that man. It sounds insane now, but back then, I believed her. 3 years ago, Derek had started to doubt. He'd looked up the name Thomas Whitmore and found nothing. He'd seen Felicia once through a crack in the basement door, thin, hollow-eyed, her hair long and matted, and the guilt had nearly destroyed him. So he'd started recording, secretly, Cassandra's admissions, her threats, her plans. He'd saved it all on the USB drive and hidden it in a storage locker across town. Last week, Derek said, I saw Cassandra at a cafe. She was laughing with a client, acting like everything was normal. And I realized she's never going to stop. She's going to keep Felicia down there forever unless someone stops her. The sirens were louder now. Close. Derek stood. I'm turning myself in tonight. I'll tell the police everything. I deserve whatever sentence I get. But please, Mr. Hayes, save Felicia. Don't let my cowardice ruin her life any more than it already has. I looked at him, this thin, broken man who'd helped lock my daughter away for 8 years, and I didn't know what to feel. Rage, pity, disgust. But I took the USB drive. You're doing the right thing now, I said quietly. That counts for something. Derek shook his head. It doesn't make up for 8 years. Through the window, I saw the red and blue lights of a police cruiser pulling up to the curb. Derek saw them too. He took a deep breath and walked toward the door. Tell Felicia, he said, without turning around, that I'm sorry. 20 minutes after Derek walked out my front door and into a police car, Detective Linda Bennett stood in my basement, staring at the steel door behind the bookshelf. Mister, Hayes, she said quietly, I need you to prepare yourself for what we're about to find in there. I nodded, but I wasn't listening. I was already prepared. I'd been preparing for 8 years. Detective Bennett was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a calm, steady voice. Officer Ryan Torres stood beside her younger, early 30s with a hand resting on his radio. 2 more officers flanked the entrance to the studio, their faces grim. I'd led them down here as soon as they arrived. Showed them the bookshelf, the keypad, the steel door. And then Cassandra had woken up. She came flying down the stairs in her pajamas, her hair wild, her eyes wide with panic. Dad, what's going on? Why are the police here? Detective Bennett turned to face her. Ms. Hayes, we have a warrant to search this property based on credible evidence of unlawful imprisonment. Cassandra's face drained of color. That's ridiculous. There's nothing down here except my studio. Then you won't mind if we take a look, Officer Torres said. Cassandra's jaw tightened. I want a lawyer. Shy, that's your right, Detective Bennett said. But we're going in now. Officer Torres approached the keypad. I'd already told them the code 2016. He entered it slowly. The LED turned green. The bookshelf slid open with a soft click. Behind it, the steel door stood slightly ajar. I'd unlocked it earlier when I'd spoken to Felicia through the metal. Detective Bennett pulled on a pair of gloves and pushed the door open. The smell hit us first. Damp, stale, disinfectant mixed with the unmistakable scent of a space that had been lived in but never aired out. Detective Bennett shone her flashlight into the room. It was about 15 by 12 feet. On the left side, a narrow twin bed with a thin blanket and a single pillow. On the right, a small desk, a desk lamp, paper, and pencils scattered across the surface. In the corner, a portable toilet, a tiny sink, and a simple plumbing setup. The walls were completely covered with drawings, hundreds of them, taped, pinned, layered over one another. Landscapes, birds, trees, and faces. One face over and over. My face. And on the bed, curled up against the wall with one arm shielding her eyes from the sudden light, was a woman. Thin, too thin. Her brown hair was long and tangled, cascading over her shoulders. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. But I knew her. God help me, I knew her. Detective Bennett stepped inside first. Hello? She said gently. My name is Detective Bennett. You're safe now. We're here to help you. The woman lowered her arm, slowly blinking against the light. Her eyes scanned the doorway, the officers, the strangers, and then they landed on me. I stepped forward, my legs shaking. It was Felicia. 8 years had changed her. She'd been 19 the last time I saw her, healthy, bright-eyed, full of life. Now she was 27. She weighed maybe 95 pounds. Her cheekbones jutted out sharply. Her eyes were sunken, ringed with shadows. But it was her. My daughter. Dad, she whispered. I couldn't speak. I just ran to her, dropped to my knees beside the bed, and wrapped my arms around her. She felt so small, so fragile. Felicia, I choked out. Oh God, Felicia, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She clung to me, her whole body trembling. You came, she whispered, her voice breaking. I knew you would. I kept drawing you, and I knew someday you'd find me. I held her tighter, sobbing into her shoulder. I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was hold on. Behind me, Detective Bennett turned away, discreetly wiping her eyes. Out in the hallway, Cassandra stood frozen, her face white as paper, her mouth open, but no sound coming out. The paramedics arrived 10 minutes later with a stretcher. Felicia was too weak to walk. Her legs had atrophied from years of limited movement. Her hands shook when she tried to stand. Detective Bennett knelt beside her. Felicia, we need to take you to the hospital. Is that okay? Felicia nodded, but her eyes never left me. Dad, don't leave me. I gripped her hand. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right there with you. Every step. The paramedics lifted her gently onto the stretcher and carried her out of the room. As we passed through the studio, Felicia's gaze shifted to Cassandra. Cassandra stood against the wall, her arms wrapped around herself, her face streaked with tears. Felicia stared at her for a long moment. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she said, "Why, Cassie? Why did you do this?" Cassandra didn't answer. She just looked at the floor and sobbed. Officer Torres stepped forward, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Cassandra Hayes, you're under arrest for unlawful imprisonment, kidnapping, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Cassandra didn't resist. She let them cuff her, let them lead her up the stairs. She didn't say a word. I followed Felicia to the ambulance. The paramedics loaded her in, and I climbed in beside her. As the doors closed, I looked back at the house I'd lived in for 10 years, never knowing my daughter was locked in a room beneath my feet. Felicia squeezed my hand. "Dad," I looked down at her. Her eyes were hollow-haunted, but they were still hers. "You found me?" she whispered. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I did. Did you ever stop looking?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. The truth was I had. I'd stopped years ago. I'd given up hope. I'd let her go. But I couldn't tell her that. Not now. Never, I lied. I never stopped. She closed her eyes and smiled just a little and squeezed my hand again. The ambulance pulled away from the curb lights, flashing siren silent. I held my daughter's hand and thought I found her. But will she ever forgive me for taking 8 years to do it? At the hospital, beneath the harsh, fluorescent lights of the examination room, Felicia told us about the night that changed everything. Detective Bennett sat beside me taking notes while a nurse monitored Felicia's vitals. My daughter's voice was soft, hesitant, as if speaking the truth aloud might make the nightmare real all over again. The room smelled like disinfectant and sterile gauze. Machines beeped softly. An IV drip fed fluids into Felicia's arm. The doctor had already given us the preliminary diagnosis: severe malnutrition, acute vitamin D deficiency, muscle atrophy. She'd need weeks, maybe months of monitored recovery. But right now, she needed to talk. I held her hand. Detective Bennett leaned forward, her recorder running. "Felicia," she said gently, "I know this is hard, but we need to understand what happened 8 years ago. Can you tell me about that night?" Felicia took a shaky breath. "It was March 15th, 2016. I was 19. I got a voice message around 11:45 p.m. Felicia said, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. "It was from Sophie Morgan. At least I thought it was Sophie. She was my best friend back then. The message said, 'Felicia, I need help. Meet me at Riverside Park. It's urgent.'" I glanced at Detective Bennett. She scribbled something in her notebook. "I didn't think twice," Felicia continued. "Sophie sounded scared, so I grabbed my keys and drove out. I had a white Toyota Corolla. I took Oakwood Avenue. It's a shortcut to the park. The street was dark, no streetlights, no traffic." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And then I saw him." "Saw who?" Detective Bennett asked. "A man. He ran out into the road. I slammed on the brakes, but I heard this sound. A thud. I got out of the car and..." Her voice cracked. "There was a man lying on the pavement, blood everywhere. I panicked. I was about to call 911 when Cassandra showed up. I froze. Cassandra was there." Felicia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She came out of nowhere. She said, 'Felicia, oh my God, what did you do?' I told her I didn't see him, that he just appeared. I said I had to call for help, but she stopped me." "What did she say?" Detective Bennett asked. "She said if I called the police, I'd go to prison. She said it was vehicular manslaughter, that I could get 20 years. Felicia's hands trembled. "She checked the man. She said he was dead. She said there was nothing we could do. She told me to go home and let her handle it. I felt sick. And you believed her. I was in shock, Dad. I couldn't think. I trusted her. The next morning, Felicia said, Cassandra showed me a news article. It was on some website I'd never heard of. It said there'd been a fatal hit and run on Oakwood Avenue. There was a photo of the victim. His name was Thomas Whitmore, 42 years old, civil engineer. He had a wife and 2 kids. Her voice broke. I thought I'd killed a father. I squeezed her hand. You didn't kill anyone, Felicia. I know that now, she whispered. But for 8 years, I believed I did. Detective Bennett leaned forward. What happened after you saw the article? Cassandra said I needed to hide. Just for a little while until she could figure things out. And then Derek showed up. Derek Hamilton, Felicia nodded. He was wearing a police uniform. He said he was there to take my statement. He asked me all these questions, what time I was driving, whether I'd been drinking. I told him I hadn't, but he said a toxicology report would determine that. He said I was facing 15 to 25 years in prison. She looked at me, her eyes hollow. I was so scared, Dad. I didn't know what to do. Cassandra said she'd find me a lawyer. She said I just needed to stay in the basement for a few days until things blew over. But it wasn't a few days, I said quietly. No, Felicia whispered. It was 8 years. Detective Bennett set down her pen. Felicia, I need to check something. Can you give me a few minutes? She stepped out into the hallway and made a call. I could hear her voice through the door, low and urgent. 5 minutes later, she came back in. Her face was unreadable. So, Felicia, she said, I just ran a search for Thomas Whitmore, 42 years old, civil engineer, Minneapolis area, 2016. Felicia tensed. And there's no record of a death by that name in Minneapolis in 2016. So I expanded the search to Wisconsin and Iowa. She paused. I found a Thomas Whitmore, 42 years old, civil engineer, lives in Madison, Wisconsin. Felicia stared at her. He's alive, Felicia. He's never been to Minneapolis, and he's never been in a car accident. The room went silent. The only sound was the beeping of the machines. Detective Bennett pulled out her phone. I'm going to call him. Right now. I want you to hear this. She dialed the number and put the call on speaker. The phone rang 3 times. Then a groggy male voice answered. Hello. Mr. Whitmore, this is Detective Linda Bennett with the Minneapolis Police Department. I need to ask you about an incident in 2016. In 2016. The man sounded confused. I'm sorry, Detective, I don't know what you're talking about. Were you involved in a traffic accident on Oakwood Avenue in Minneapolis on March 15, 2016? Not a traffic accident, ma'am. I've never even been to Minneapolis. I've lived in Madison my whole life. Can you confirm that you're alive and well, Mr. Whitmore? The man laughed, nervous, bewildered. As far as I know, yeah. Detective, what's this about? Felicia's hand flew to her mouth. A sob tore out of her throat. He's alive. He never died. I pulled her into my arms. It was all a lie, baby. All of it. Detective Bennett ended the call. Felicia, you didn't kill anyone. There was no victim. Your sister staged the entire thing. Felicia buried her face in my shoulder and wept. 8 years. She choked out. She let me think I was a murderer for 8 years. The next day, after Felicia had been admitted for observation and had finally fallen into a deep, exhausted sleep, Detective Bennett called me down to the station. We've been digging into the evidence, Mr. Hayes, she said over the phone, and we found something else. Something that proves this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. I drove to the Minneapolis Police Department, a 4-story building downtown, and followed her to a conference room on the second floor. The table was covered with files, photographs, and documents. Officer Torres was there along with a bespectacled man in his 50s who introduced himself as Dr. Alan Pierce, a forensic document examiner. "We've been tracing Felicia's car," Detective Bennett said without preamble. "The 2012 Toyota Corolla, white, Minnesota plates. And what we found? It's chilling." She spread 3 documents across the table. Dr. Pierce leaned forward, pointing to the first page. "This is the vehicle registration for a 2012 Toyota Corolla license plate ABC4729. Registered owner Felicia Hayes." He slid the second document forward. "This is a bill of sale dated March 28, 2016, 13 days after the staged accident. The car was sold to Iowa Auto Exchange in Des Moines for $3,500 cash. And here," he tapped the bottom of the page, "is the seller's signature. Felicia Hayes." I stared at the signature. It looked like Felicia's handwriting. The looping F, the slant of the H. Dr. Pierce placed a third document beside the bill of sale, a photocopy of Felicia's driver's license, and an old lease agreement she'd signed in college. "This is Felicia's real signature," he said. "Now look closely." He pulled out a magnifying glass and handed it to me. I leaned over the bill of sale, squinting through the lens. At first I saw nothing, but then I noticed tiny hesitations in the ink. Micro-tremors where the pen had paused, lifted, repositioned. The strokes weren't fluid. They were copied. "This signature is a forgery," Dr. Pierce said. "A good one. But under magnification, you can see the stopping points, places where the forger checked the original and then continued. This was not written by Felicia Hayes." I set the magnifying glass down, my hands shaking. "Cassandra," Detective Bennett nodded. "We contacted Iowa Auto Exchange. They confirmed that a woman in her mid-20s sold the car. Cash transaction. They still had security footage from 2016. She clicked a button on the laptop in front of her. A grainy video filled the screen. A woman walked into the dealership. She wore a baseball cap, pulled low, oversized sunglasses, and a medical mask. The timestamp read March 28, 2016, 2:47 p.m. I couldn't see her face, but I recognized her build, her walk, the way she carried herself. It was Cassandra. She signed the paperwork, accepted a stack of cash, and left. The whole transaction took 8 minutes. Officer Torres spoke up. "We also checked with the DMV. Felicia never reported the car stolen. You never reported it missing either." I shook my head slowly. "Because Cassandra told me Felicia had taken the car and left. She said Felicia was going to California to start over. And you believed her," Detective Bennett said quietly. "I did." My voice was hollow. "I thought Felicia had run away." Dr. Pierce cleared his throat. "Mr. Hayes, there's one more thing. We found a partial fingerprint on the bill of sale underneath the forged signature. It's Cassandra's. She tried to wipe it clean, but she missed a spot." I stared at the document. "She planned this. Before the accident even happened, she knew she was going to get rid of the car." "That's what we believe," Detective Bennett said. "Selling the car this quickly within 2 weeks suggests she wanted to eliminate any evidence that Felicia was still in the area. This wasn't impulsive, Mr. Hayes. This was premeditated." I sank into the chair, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. "She knew exactly what she was doing. She staged the accident, locked Felicia in the basement, sold her car, and made it look like Felicia had run away." "Yes," Detective Bennett said. "I thought back to those first few weeks after Felicia disappeared. Cassandra had seemed so worried. She'd cried. She'd helped me file the missing persons report. She'd called Felicia's friends, asking if anyone had heard from her. All lies. Oh, she told me Felicia just needed space." I said, my voice breaking. She said Felicia would call when she was ready, and I believed her. For 8 years, I believed her. Detective Bennett sat down across from me. Mr. Hayes, Cassandra is your daughter. You trusted her. That's not blindness. That's love. And she exploited it. I looked up at her. What kind of person does this to their own sister? She didn't answer. Because there was no answer that made sense. That weekend, Riley called me with a name, Marcus Grant, an audio forensic specialist. Mr. Hayes, she said over the phone. I think I know how Cassandra convinced everyone that Felicia was still in touch after she disappeared. And you're not going to believe it. I met them Monday afternoon at Riley's office digital arts studio, a sleek glass building in downtown Minneapolis. The conference room was small, lined with monitors and audio equipment. Riley sat across from me, her laptop open. Beside her was a man in his mid-30s with sandy hair and sharp, analytical eyes. Mr. Hayes, this is Marcus Grant, Riley said. He used to work for the FBI as an audio forensic analyst. Marcus shook my hand firmly. Ms. Summers brought me some voice messages she received years ago. Messages she believed were from Felicia Hayes. She asked me to analyze them. What I found is deeply concerning. He opened a folder on the laptop and clicked the first file. A voice filled the room. Soft, familiar, achingly real. Riley, it's me. I'm okay. I just need some time away. Don't worry about me. I'll call when I'm ready. Love you. I froze. That's Felicia. Riley's eyes were red-rimmed. That's what I thought too. Marcus played a second message. Riley, I'm still doing fine. I'm somewhere new starting over. Don't try to find me, okay? I need this space. Take care. Then a third, this one sent to my phone in August 2017. Dad, I love you. I'm safe. I just need to figure things out on my own. I'll come home someday. I hope you understand. My throat tightened. I'd listened to that message dozens of times. I'd clung to it. It had been my proof that Felicia was alive, that she was okay, that she'd chosen to leave. How is this not her? I whispered. Marcus leaned forward. Because it's not a person, Mr. Hayes. Watch this. He replayed the first message this time, displaying a waveform on the screen, a jagged line of peaks and valleys representing the sound. Red markers dotted the waveform at irregular intervals. These red points indicate artificial synthesis, Marcus said. This voice was created using AI voice cloning technology. I stared at the screen. AI. In 2016. Yes, Marcus said. Voice cloning technology was emerging around 2015 and 2016. It wasn't as sophisticated as it is now, but it was good enough to fool people who knew the voice well, especially over a phone or voicemail where audio quality is already compressed. He pulled up another window. To clone a voice, you need about 5 to 10 minutes of clean audio samples. The software analyzes the pitch, tone, cadence, and speech patterns, then generates new speech that sounds identical to the original speaker. Riley spoke up. I found old videos on Cassandra's laptop, family gatherings, birthday parties. Cassandra had hours of Felicia's voice on file. Marcus clicked through to a comparison screen. On one side was the waveform of the voicemail. On the other was a waveform from an old video of Felicia speaking at a family dinner. That the pitch and tone match almost perfectly, Marcus said. But look here. He zoomed in on a segment of the voicemail. See these micro-pauses? They're slightly longer than natural human speech, fractions of a second, but consistent. And here, he pointed to another section. The breathing doesn't align with the words. A real person inhales and exhales at predictable points. This doesn't. He played the voicemail again, this time highlighting the glitches. I heard it now, tiny, almost imperceptible stutters. A breath that came half a beat too late. A word that sounded just slightly too smooth. To the average listener, it sounds real, Marcus said. But under analysis, it's clearly synthetic. I sank back in my chair, my head spinning. You're telling me that every message I thought was from my daughter was fake? I analyzed 5 messages sent over 3 years, Marcus said. All of them show signs of AI generation. Riley wiped her eyes. I believed her, Mr. Hayes. Every time I got a message from Felicia, I thought she was okay. I stopped searching because I thought that's what she wanted. I looked at Marcus. What kind of skill does it take to do this? In 2016, basic technical knowledge. There were a few apps and online services that offered voice cloning. Anyone with access to audio samples and a laptop could do it. He paused. But the level of deception here, sending messages over 3 years, timing them strategically, making sure they sounded natural, that takes planning. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, I thought back. Cassandra had always been good with technology. She'd majored in computer science her first year of college before switching to jewelry design. She'd helped me set up my phone. She'd fixed Riley's laptop once when it crashed. She had the skills, I said quietly. And she had the motive. Riley leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, there's something else. I went through Cassandra's email archives. Detective Bennett gave me access as part of the investigation. I found receipts for a voice synthesis service called VoiceForge. She subscribed in April 2016, 1 month after Felicia disappeared. Marcus nodded. VoiceForge was one of the early platforms. It's been shut down since then, but in 2016, it was one of the most accessible tools for voice cloning. I stared at the screen at the red markers scattered across the audio file like tiny wounds. Marcus played the message one more time, this time highlighting the micro-errors in the waveform pauses that lasted a fraction of a second longer than they should, breaths that didn't align with the words. This isn't your daughter, Mr. Hayes, he said gently. This is a machine. I stared at the screen, at the red markers scattered across the audio file like small wounds. For 3 years, I'd listened to these messages and felt relief. Relief that Felicia was alive. Relief that she was okay. Relief that she'd chosen to leave. I'd stopped searching because I thought it was what she wanted. But all along it was Cassandra, sitting in her studio, uploading audio files, pressing send, watching me believe the lie. Tuesday morning, Detective Bennett called. We found the contractor who built that room, Mr. Hayes, she said. Her voice was tight with barely contained anger. His name is Jake Morrison, from Des Moines, Iowa. He flew in this morning to cooperate with the investigation. Do you want to hear what he has to say? An hour later, I sat behind a one-way mirror at the police station, watching a middle-aged man with rough hands and a guilty conscience fidget in the interrogation room. Officer Torres stood beside me, arms crossed. That's him, he said quietly. Jay Morrison, the $100,000 contractor. I stared through the glass. Jake Morrison looked to be in his early 50s. Graying hair, weathered face, a faded flannel shirt. His hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of coffee, knuckles white. Detective Bennett sat across from him, a recorder between them on the table. Mr. Morrison, she said, thank you for coming in voluntarily. Can you tell me about the work you did for Cassandra Hayes in 2016? Jake nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. I've been carrying this guilt for 8 years. It was March of 2016. Jake began, his voice rough. I got a message through Craigslist. Someone was looking for a contractor from out of state, specifically not from Minnesota. The job was unusual. Unusual how? Detective Bennett asked. She wanted a hidden room built in a basement, soundproofed, with a lock on the outside. He swallowed hard. She said it was a wine cellar, a special one. She said she needed privacy and strict temperature control. She was very specific about the lock, said her father was elderly and sometimes wandered, and she needed to keep him safe from the valuables inside. I felt my stomach turn. She offered $15,000, cash. No paperwork. No permits. I was supposed to work only when the homeowner was out of town. She said he traveled a lot for work, pilot, she said, and she wanted it to be a surprise. Detective Bennett leaned forward. And you didn't find any of that suspicious? Jake's face crumpled. Of course I did. But my wife, she was sick. Stage 4 cancer. The medical bills were burying us. $15,000 cash, no taxes. I didn't ask questions I should have asked. He set the coffee cup down, his hands shaking. I told myself it was just a rich person's weird hobby, a fancy wine cellar. That's what I wanted to believe. Walk me through the construction, Detective Bennett said. Jake took a breath. It took 3 weeks. The homeowner, Mr. Hayes, was in Europe on a long flight rotation. Cassandra gave me access to the house. I built a false drywall wall to create a hidden space behind it, about 15 by 12 feet. I did the math. 180 square feet. The same measurements Officer Torres had confirmed when we found Felicia. I installed a steel door with a deadbolt lock that could only be opened from the outside. Jake continued. I set up a basic ventilation system tied into the house's HVAC so it wouldn't be noticed. I installed a portable toilet, a small sink plumbing that connected to the main lines. Soundproofing foam on the walls and ceiling. She wanted it completely silent. And you still thought it was a wine cellar? Detective Bennett's voice was cold. Jake looked down. No. By the end, I knew it wasn't. But I'd already taken the money. My wife was dying. And I convinced myself it wasn't my business. When did you realize what you'd built? Detective Bennett asked. 2020, Jake said quietly. I saw a news article about a missing girl, Felicia Hayes, Minneapolis. I recognized the last name. I started wondering but I had no proof. And I was terrified. Terrified that if I said something, I'd be arrested as an accomplice. He looked up at Detective Bennett, his eyes red. Last week I saw it on CNN. They found her. Alive. In a basement room. And I knew. I knew it was the room I built. So you called us. Yes, ma'am. I couldn't live with it anymore. There was a long silence. Then Detective Bennett stood. Wait here. She stepped out of the room and gestured to me through the glass. Mr. Hayes, do you want to speak with him? I didn't know if I did, but I nodded. When I walked into the interrogation room, Jake Morrison looked up at me, and his face went pale. Mr. Hayes, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. If I'd known, I sat down across from him. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask him how he could build a prison for a human being and walk away. But when I looked at him, all I saw was another person Cassandra had used. You built the room that held my daughter for 8 years, I said quietly. Jake's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I should have asked more questions. I should have reported it. But I was desperate and I failed. Your wife, I said, is she? She passed 6 months after I finished the job. His voice was hollow. The medical bills bankrupted us anyway. All that money and it didn't save her. It just made me a monster. I didn't know what to say. Part of me hated him. Part of me understood. Mr. Morrison, Detective Bennett said from the doorway. You'll be charged as an accessory. However, your cooperation will be taken into account. Jake nodded. I'll take whatever sentence I deserve. I stood to leave. At the door, I turned back. If you'd asked one more question, I said. Just one. My daughter might have been free 7 years and 11 months sooner. 2 days later, Detective Bennett called and asked me to meet her at a quiet coffee shop a few blocks from my house. Someone came into the station this morning, she said over the phone. His name is Eddie. He says he witnessed the staged accident 8 years ago on Oakwood Avenue. Mr. Hayes, I think you need to hear this. I arrived at the corner cafe 20 minutes later. Detective Bennett was sitting in a booth at the back, a file folder and a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked tired. Eddie came in voluntarily this morning, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. He's been unhoused for the past decade, but he's been sober for 3 months now. He said it was time to tell the truth. So who is Eddie? I asked. He's about 50. Homeless back in 2016. He used to sleep in an abandoned building near Oakwood Avenue. She opened the folder and pulled out a handwritten statement. He saw the whole thing, the staged accident, the mannequin, everything, but he never reported it. Why not? She slid the folder toward me. Let me tell you what he said. Detective Bennett leaned back and began. Eddie was sleeping in an old warehouse about 150 feet from Oakwood Avenue on the night of March 15, 2016. Around 12:15 in the morning, he woke up because he heard a car engine. I listened, my hands folded on the table. He looked out a broken window and saw a gray Honda Civic parked on the side of the road. Lights off. A man got out. Eddie described him as mid-30s average build. The man opened the trunk and pulled something out. Eddie said it looked like a person at first, but it moved weird. Stiff, like a doll. My chest tightened. The man dragged it into the middle of the road and laid it down. Then he poured something red on the pavement around it. Eddie said it looked like blood, but he could tell it wasn't real, too thick, too bright. A woman stood nearby watching. She didn't help. Just watched. Cassandra, I said quietly. Detective Bennett nodded. Eddie didn't know her name at the time, but his description matches. About 5 minutes later, a white Toyota Corolla came down the road. It braked hard. The driver got out, a young woman, early 20s. She looked terrified. The woman who'd been watching ran over to her, and they talked for a few minutes. Then the man picked up the mannequin, put it back in the trunk of the Honda, and drove away. I stared at her. He saw the whole setup. Yes, he knew it was fake. He watched them stage it from start to finish. So why didn't he come forward? Detective Bennett sighed. He was homeless, Mr. Hayes, an alcoholic. He had no ID, no address, no credibility. He said he figured no one would believe him, a drunk homeless guy, over 2 people who looked clean-cut and wealthy. He thought maybe they were filming a movie or doing some kind of prank. He told himself it wasn't his business. I felt a surge of anger. It was his business. A girl went missing. He knows that now, Detective Bennett said gently. About a month later, in April of 2016, he started seeing missing person flyers all over downtown. Felicia Hayes. He recognized her. She was the girl in the white car. But he still didn't come forward. He was afraid. Afraid they'd come after him if they found out he'd witnessed it. Afraid the police would think he was involved. And afraid no one would believe him anyway. She paused, letting the words sink in. For 8 years, he carried it. He said every time he saw a news story about a missing person, he thought about Felicia, but he didn't know what to do. He was still drinking, still on the streets, still invisible. Until now, I said. Until last week. He saw the story on TV, Felicia found alive, rescued from a basement. He's been in a recovery center for 3 months working on getting sober. He said seeing that news report broke him. He couldn't carry the guilt anymore. So he walked into the station this morning and told us everything. I stared down at the folder. Does his story match Derek's? Perfectly, Detective Bennett said. The timing, the location, the Honda Civic, the mannequin, the fake blood, it all matches Derek Hamilton's confession. Eddie had no way of knowing what Derek told us. He's never met Derek or Cassandra. He's a completely independent witness. That makes his testimony valuable. Extremely. A jury will find it very compelling. I nodded slowly. Is he going to be charged for not coming forward? No. Under Minnesota law, failure to report a crime isn't illegal unless you're a mandated reporter, teachers, doctors, social workers. Eddie had no legal obligation to come forward, and he's cooperating fully now. I looked out the window. The street was busy, people walking, laughing, living their lives. None of them knew. So he just gets to walk away, I asked. Legally, yes. Detective Bennett's voice softened. Morally, that's between him and his conscience. But for what it's worth, he asked me to give you this. She pulled a small folded piece of paper from the folder and handed it to me. I opened it. The handwriting was shaky but legible. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner. I was scared. I was ashamed. If I could go back and change it, I would. I hope your daughter can find peace. Eddie. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I didn't know what to feel. Gratitude, anger, both. What happens now? I asked. Eddie will testify at trial if we need him, Detective Bennett said. Between his testimony, Derek's confession, the forensic evidence, Jake Morrison's statement, and the voice cloning analysis, we have an airtight case against Cassandra. Good. She closed the folder. Mr. Hayes, I know this has been overwhelming, but we're almost there. I nodded. Almost there. But all I could think was 8 years. One more person who could have stopped this. The arrest happened on a Saturday morning, right in the middle of Cassandra's gallery opening. Detective Bennett had chosen the timing deliberately. She's had a week of freedom while we built the case, Bennett told me the night before. But today we have everything we need, and I want her to understand that the perfect public image she's built won't protect her anymore. I stood outside Cassandra Hayes Designs, a sleek modern gallery in downtown Minneapolis, at 10:45 a.m. Through the glass windows, I could see about 40 guests milling around, sipping champagne, admiring jewelry displayed under spotlights. White walls, polished floors, everything pristine, curated perfect. And there at the center of it all was Cassandra. She wore an elegant black dress, her makeup flawless, her smile confident, as she gestured to a display case and spoke to a small group of VIP clients. Detective Bennett stood beside me along with Officer Torres and 3 other officers. Mr. Hayes, are you sure you want to witness this? I nodded. I need to see it. She gave me a long look, then nodded. All right. Let's go. We walked in through the front door. The bell above it chimed softly. A few guests glanced over, curious. Then they saw the uniforms. The room went quiet. Cassandra turned mid-sentence, and her eyes landed on Detective Bennett. Her smile faltered. Her face went pale. Cassandra Hayes. Detective Bennett said, her voice calm and clear, echoing through the silent gallery. You are under arrest for kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. Cassandra took a step back. There's been a mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. You have the right to remain silent. Detective Bennett continued, stepping forward. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Officer Torres moved to Cassandra's side, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. Cassandra's eyes darted around the room. The guests had backed away, their faces shocked, horrified. A few people whispered to each other. Someone held up a phone filming. Then Cassandra saw me, standing just inside the doorway, watching. Her eyes widened. Dad, I walked forward slowly. The crowd parted. Cassandra stared at me, her face crumpling. Dad, please, she said, her voice breaking. You have to believe me. I was trying to protect her. She was in danger. Stop lying, Cassandra, I said quietly. I know everything. The fake accident, Thomas Whitmore, the AI voice messages, Jake Morrison, Eddie, Derek, all of it. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand. Felicia was going to leave us. She had a job offer in New York. She was going to abandon the family. After Mom died, I promised I'd keep us together. By locking your sister in a basement for 8 years. My voice rose. By stealing her designs. By making her believe she was a murderer. I gave her food, Cassandra sobbed. I gave her art supplies. I kept her safe. You made her a prisoner, I shouted. She was 19 years old, Cassandra. She had her whole life ahead of her and you stole it. Cassandra collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I didn't mean for it to last 8 years. I was going to let her out. But I couldn't. I needed her dad. I needed her talent. I needed those designs. I needed her. I looked down at my daughter, the one I'd trusted, the one I'd believed, and I saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone who genuinely believed she'd done the right thing. You didn't need her, I said. You used her, and you destroyed both your lives in the process. Officer Torres helped Cassandra to her feet. She trembled as he cuffed her hands behind her back. The gallery was silent. A few reporters had gathered near the door, cameras flashing. Detective Bennett waved them back. As they led Cassandra toward the exit, she stopped beside me. I did it for us, Dad, she whispered. I did it to keep us from falling apart. Don't you see? I didn't answer. Please don't hate me, she said, her voice small. I'm still your daughter. My voice shook. You were my daughter, but I don't know who you are anymore. Cassandra let out a broken sob as Officer Torres guided her toward the door. The crowd parted. Cameras clicked. Someone shouted a question, but Detective Bennett shut it down. I stood alone in the gallery surrounded by jewelry displays. Cassandra's collection. Felicia's designs. I walked over to one of the cases. A silver necklace with intricate vines curling around the pendant. I leaned closer, squinting at the design. There it was, hidden in the curve of a leaf. The letter F. Riley's words echoed in my mind. She was screaming for help in every single design. Through the window, I watched as Officer Torres opened the door of the police cruiser and helped Cassandra inside. She turned back one last time, her face streaked with tears, her perfect image shattered. I did it for us, Dad, she'd said. I stood there surrounded by stolen beauty and felt something inside me break, because the cruelest part wasn't that she'd destroyed Felicia's life. It was that she truly believed even now, even after everything, that she'd done the right thing. 1 week after Cassandra's arrest, Felicia was discharged from the hospital. The doctors said her physical condition had stabilized, though they warned she would need months, maybe years of therapy to process what had been done to her. That evening, sitting in the living room of the same house where she'd been held captive, my daughter finally told me how she survived. I had cleaned out the basement, sealed the entrance. I couldn't bring myself to tear down the walls, not yet, but I locked the door and hid it behind a tall bookshelf. Felicia told me she didn't want to see it, not ever again. She sat on the couch, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, her skin holding more color than it had a week earlier. I made tea and sat beside her, afraid to rush her. Dad, she said softly, I want to tell you everything. Not for the police, not for the trial, just for you. So you understand. I told her she didn't have to, not if it was too soon. I need to, she said. I need to say it out loud so I know it's really over. I nodded. I'm here. The first week was the worst. Felicia said, her hands wrapped around the mug. I cried constantly. I wouldn't eat. I kept thinking it was a nightmare and I'd wake up. But I never did. She stared into the tea. Cassandra brought food 3 times a day. She'd sit outside the door and talk through the crack. She kept telling me she was protecting me, that the police were searching for me, that if they found me, I'd go to prison. She said she was finding a lawyer, but it would take time. She said I just had to trust her. My jaw tightened. I believed her, Felicia whispered. I was terrified. I thought I'd killed someone. I thought I was a murderer. So I started eating. I started surviving, because I thought, if I stayed alive long enough, Cassandra would fix it. But she didn't, I said. No. By the second month, when I asked when I could leave, she said, not yet. Then it was 3 months, then 6, then a year. Her voice cracked. That's when I knew she was never letting me out. She took a breath. In 2017, something strange happened. One day I heard movement in the vent. A bird, a sparrow with a broken wing, fell into the room. I looked at her stunned. I took care of it, she said quietly. I tore cloth to make a splint, fed it crumbs from my bread. I named it Hope. Her eyes filled. Watching Hope heal gave me a reason to keep going. It reminded me that broken things could be mended. What happened to her, I asked. In 2018, I helped her escape through the vent. I thought she'd fly away. But 2 days later, she came back. Felicia smiled faintly. I realized we were both trapped. She couldn't leave me. I couldn't leave that room. But having her there kept me alive. She wiped her eyes. To stay sane, I started drawing. Cassandra gave me paper pencils and art books. She said I needed to design jewelry for her. She said the money would help my legal defense. I closed my eyes. I didn't draw for her, Felicia said. I drew for me. Every day. Forests, oceans, birds, and you, Dad. Over 100 portraits of you drawn from memory. Drawing your face reminded me that someone out there loved me, that someday you'd find me. In 2019, she continued, Cassandra pushed harder. She wanted designs for her business. I knew by then there were no lawyers, but I needed something to hold on to, so I designed. She met my eyes. That's when I started hiding the letter F in every piece. I nodded. Riley told me. I knew she'd see it, Felicia said. In college, Riley and I used to hide marks in our work. It was our way of saying, this is mine. So I did it again. It was my silent scream. From 2019 to 2022, I designed 15 pieces, all with the hidden F, and only Riley noticed. Her voice trembled. Only Riley. I took her hand. She never stopped searching. I know, Felicia whispered. She saved me. By year 8, she said I was losing hope. I thought I'd die there. I stopped drawing as much. I stopped caring. And then one day I heard a man's voice outside. Gary. He was talking to you. I remembered. I cried louder, she said. A few days later I heard your voice. You said my name. Her hands shook. When I heard you, I knew I'd live. I knew you'd come. I pulled her into my arms, and we cried together, not from pain, but relief. Every day I drew something, Felicia said softly. Pictures of you, of forests and skies I couldn't see, of Hope the bird who taught me broken wings can heal. She looked at me, and for the first time in 8 years, I saw light in her eyes. I survived because I believed you'd find me, she said. Even when I wanted to give up. Even when I thought I'd die. I kept drawing you, because I knew you'd never stop being my father. I held her close and we cried again, because she was right. I had never stopped being her father. I had only forgotten how to see the truth. 3 months later, I sat in the gallery of the Hennepin County Courthouse, watching my oldest daughter face justice. The trial had lasted 2 weeks, but today was sentencing day. Cassandra sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale but composed. Behind me, Felicia gripped my hand. We were here to witness the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The courtroom was hushed. Dark wood panels, high ceilings. The seal of Minnesota hung behind the judge's bench. Judge Margaret Sullivan, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness, reviewed the file one last time before looking up. "This court will come to order," she said. I felt Felicia tense beside me. The trial had been exhausting. 2 weeks of testimony, evidence, and legal arguments. The prosecution had built an airtight case. Cassandra Hayes had been charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. Derek Hamilton had been tried separately and had already pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. The witnesses had been devastating. Felicia Hayes had taken the stand on day 3. She'd spoken in a quiet, steady voice, recounting 8 years in a basement room. "I believed I was a murderer for 8 years, she'd said, looking directly at Cassandra. "My sister took my life with a lie." Derek Hamilton had testified on day 5. He'd admitted to staging the accident, impersonating a police officer, and helping Cassandra maintain the deception. His voice had cracked when he said, "I was a coward. I should have stopped it. I didn't." Dorothy Green had presented her journals and security footage. 8 years of evidence, patterns of late-night activity, Cassandra coming and going with bags of food. "I should have called the police sooner," she'd said, her voice shaking. "I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Riley Summers had explained the hidden F signatures, 15 designs over 3 years. "Felicia was screaming for help," Riley had said, "and I almost missed it." Eddie had testified about witnessing the staged accident. His account had matched Derek's confession perfectly. An independent witness with no connection to anyone involved. The evidence had been overwhelming. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Now, 3 months after Cassandra's arrest, it was time for sentencing. Judge Sullivan looked at Cassandra. "Ms. Hayes, do you wish to make a statement before I impose sentence?" Cassandra stood slowly. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, but she shook her head. "Yes, Your Honor." She turned to face the courtroom. Her eyes found me. Then Felicia. "I know what everyone thinks," she said, her voice trembling. "That I'm a monster, that I'm cruel. But that's not who I am. I love my sister. I've always loved her." Felicia's hand tightened in mine. Felicia was going to leave, Cassandra continued. She had a job offer in New York. She was going to abandon us. After Mom died, I promised I'd keep our family together. I was trying to protect her. I gave her food. I gave her art supplies. I kept her safe. "You locked me in a basement," Felicia's voice rang out from behind me. "You stole 8 years of my life." Judge Sullivan raised a hand. "Ms. Hayes, you'll have your opportunity to speak." Cassandra's face crumpled. "I didn't mean for it to last 8 years. I was going to let her out. But I couldn't. I needed her. I needed her talent. And I really thought I was doing the right thing." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, please. I did it for us. I did it to keep us from falling apart." I said nothing. I couldn't. Judge Sullivan's expression was cold. "Ms. Hayes, you may sit down." The judge opened the sentencing file. The courtroom was silent. "Cassandra Hayes," Judge Sullivan began, "you have been convicted by a jury of your peers of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. The evidence presented at trial shows a pattern of calculated, deliberate cruelty spanning 8 years. She looked up, her gaze hard. "You did not act out of love, Ms. Hayes. You acted out of control. Love does not imprison. Love does not deceive. Love does not steal another person's life." Cassandra bowed her head. "On the charge of kidnapping, I sentence you to 15 years in prison. On the charge of unlawful imprisonment, I sentence you to 10 years to run consecutively. Combined with the other charges, your total sentence is 25 years in the Minnesota Correctional Facility for women. You will be eligible for parole after 15 years. The gavel came down. The sound echoed through the courtroom. 25 years. Cassandra's shoulders shook. Her lawyer leaned in, speaking quietly. Two officers approached to take her into custody. As they led her past me, Cassandra stopped. Dad, I looked at her. The daughter I'd raised. The girl I'd taught to ride a bike, to tie her shoes, to be kind. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Outside the courtroom, Felicia leaned against me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The sentence doesn't erase the 8 years, she whispered. I held her tighter. No, I said. But it means it will never happen again. We stood there for a long moment. Then Felicia straightened, wiped her eyes, and looked at me. Can we go home now? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, let's go home. Outside the sun was shining, bright and warm, and for the first time in 8 years, my daughter was walking into it as a completely free woman. 6 months after the trial, I stood at the back of a crowded bookstore watching my daughter speak to a room of about 200 people. She'd gained 15 pounds. Her hair was cut in a short, confident style, and her cheeks had color again. But more than that, there was a light in her eyes, a real light born of healing, not just survival. The bookstore was Malaprop's, a cozy, independent spot in downtown Minneapolis. The crowd was a mix of journalists, supporters, survivors of trauma, and curious readers. In the front row sat Riley, Stephen, Dorothy, and Gary, people who'd fought alongside us to bring Felicia home. On the table beside Felicia sat a stack of books. The cover showed a single bird breaking free from a dark cage, wings spread wide against an open sky. The Hidden Room, a memoir of survival by Felicia Hayes. I'd read it twice already. Each time it broke me, and each time it reminded me why we'd fought so hard. Felicia stood at the podium, her voice steady but soft. She wore a simple black sweater and jeans, her hands folded in front of her. Thank you all for being here, she began. This book wasn't easy to write, but I needed to tell this story, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever felt trapped. Trapped by circumstance, trapped by trauma, trapped by someone else's control. She paused, scanning the crowd. I spent 8 years in a basement. 8 years believing I was a murderer. My sister convinced me that the world was safer without me in it. That I was broken, dangerous, unworthy of love. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. But I wasn't broken. I was manipulated, and it took me a long time to understand the difference. The room was silent. Riley was crying openly. Then in that room I had almost nothing. But I had paper, I had pencils, and I had a sparrow named Hope. A few people smiled through their tears. Hope was injured when she fell through the ventilation shaft. I nursed her back to health, and when I let her go, she came back. She reminded me that even in the darkest places, life finds a way. Her eyes found mine across the room. And I wrote this book for my dad, the man who never stopped being my father, even when I thought he'd forgotten about me. I felt my throat tighten. I just nodded. After the event, we drove home. Not to the house on Ashford Lane. We'd sold that place months ago. Neither of us could stand to live there anymore. Our new apartment was on the 5th floor of a modern building near the river. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that let in light all day long. Felicia had insisted on that. I need to see the sky, she'd said. Always. We sat on the couch with mugs of tea, the city lights glowing outside. That was amazing, sweetheart, I said. You were incredible. She smiled, a real smile, warm and whole. Thanks, Dad. It felt good. Scary, but good. How are you feeling, really? She thought for a moment. I'm better. Therapy helps. The support groups help. And honestly, the art therapy workshops have been the best thing I've ever done. After the trial, Felicia had decided not to return to jewelry design. Instead, she'd opened Hope's Wings Art Therapy, a nonprofit that offered free creative workshops for trauma survivors. She used painting, drawing, and sculpture to help people process their pain just like she had. "You're helping so many people," I said. "I think I needed to find meaning in what happened. I can't change the past, but I can help people who are going through something similar." I nodded. "Your mom would be so proud of you." Felicia's smile faltered for just a second. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "Do you think I'll ever be able to forgive Cassandra?" I set down my mug, choosing my words carefully. "I don't know, honey. Maybe. Maybe not. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give when and if you're ready." "I know," she said quietly. "Part of me still loves her. She was my sister. But another part of me, I don't know if I can ever let that go." "You don't have to decide today," I said. "Healing takes time, and you're allowed to feel whatever you feel." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thanks, Dad." Later that night, I stood by the window looking out at the skyline. Felicia had gone to bed exhausted but content. I thought about everything we'd been through: the lies, the manipulation, the 8 years of silence, the trial, the pain. But I also thought about the light in Felicia's eyes, the way she'd stood in front of 200 people and told her story, the way she'd built something beautiful out of something broken. She hadn't just survived, she'd won. I glanced at the book on the coffee table, The Hidden Room, and smiled. Tomorrow we'd keep moving forward. We'd keep healing. We'd keep building this new life one day at a time. But tonight I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Felicia was safe. She was strong. She was free. And so was I. And to you listening to this family story, remember this: I almost lost my daughter. Not because I didn't love her, but because I trusted the wrong person. I trusted appearances over instincts. I trusted silence over questions. And I trusted comfort over truth. If I could go back, I would have listened harder. I would have asked more questions. I would have trusted God to guide me through my doubts instead of burying them under guilt and exhaustion. Don't be like me. Don't wait 8 years to see what's right in front of you. God gave me 3 chances to see the truth. When Gary heard crying in the basement, when Dorothy showed me the receipts, and when Riley found the hidden signature. 3 times he whispered, "Look closer." And 3 times I almost turned away. Thank God I didn't. This family story taught me something painful, but necessary: love without vigilance is not protection. Love without action is not enough. My dad revenge wasn't about anger. It was about justice. It was about refusing to let evil hide behind the word family. Here's my advice. Don't be like me. Don't assume the people closest to you are incapable of harm. Don't ignore the red flags because confrontation feels uncomfortable. And don't ever stop fighting for the people you love, even when the fight is against someone you love. This dad revenge wasn't just for Felicia. It was for every parent who's ever been manipulated, every sibling who's ever been betrayed, and every survivor who's ever been silenced. Some people call it revenge, but I call it dad revenge, a father's refusal to let his child suffer in silence. So if this family story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you to pay attention, leave a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story that matters. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Your time means everything. And a final note, the stories on this channel may contain fictional elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. Take care and stay vigilant.